just to cover Netanyahu's UNGA rant today, which was very similar to his speech before Congress, but with a slightly more international angle. And with one major difference, which is that most of his audience actually walked out on him because he was addressing the world instead of a bunch of hacks who were paid by his cutouts in AIPAC to applaud like seals at feeding time. So this is the main thrust of Netanyahu's speech, and I think it should be addressed. And you know, we had a play on this in our thumbnail image, but in his speech in New York today, Netanyahu told a mostly empty chamber that the people of the Middle East were offered a blessing and a curse. And he's playing off a verse, I think, in Deuteronomy, where Moses leads his people, his tribe, to the promised land of Israel and urges them to take the blessing brought by God or face a curse, to basically take the religion handed down to them, the 10 commandments and so on, follow the rules. And Netanyahu, so therefore Netanyahu's playing God. He's basically saying Israel is God in the region. And there's a curse, and the curse is Iran, Iraq, all of Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and there's a little dot there for Gaza. And basically all of that, if you really think about it, he's basically saying all of that has to be eliminated, that death has to be brought to that entire region. But if you follow that, you will be cursed if you are part of the axis of resistance. And the blessing is a land bridge, a sort of Zionist Belt and Road initiative from Israel through Saudi Arabia. Look at the arrow pointing left to right. In Egypt and Sudan, which have basically sold out and bought into the Israeli Western project of controlling the Middle East, are part of it. The arrow moving left to right points to India, and he will create a land bridge from Saudi Arabia all the way to Modi's India that will bring tech and prosperity to the Middle East. But all that has to happen is the axis of resistance has to be destroyed, and then Israel will flourish completely. So that's really what this war is about in the grand scheme for Netanyahu. And it is a war that he framed as a 7-front war that is existential, and in which rocket launchers are in the homes of pretty much everyone in Lebanon. So he claimed the right to do to Lebanon what he has done to Gaza. It was a somewhat terrifying speech, but if you look at this image, it's basically a messianic framing of the Abraham Accords that the Biden administration and the Trump administration, particularly the Trump administration, are dead set on achieving. And it explains why October 7th happened, because it simply requires that Palestinians be completely defeated, be placed in the historical icebox, and just accept their lot. And then Israel will give them a piece of the slave.
That is not only, I mean, every Netanyahu speech is pretty much like that. I can't watch them anymore. It's just like watching some energy sucking demon, and it's scary. But that's also, if you go all the way back to the clean break document or the plans after 9/11 that were leaked to go to war with 7 different Muslim countries this has always been the plan. They come up with different narratives step by step to get us to go for it, whether it's war with Syria, whether it's war with Iraq, whether it's war with Libya. But it is an agenda that was outlined far before 9/11, long before 9/11, that has gotten us to this place in 2024, which achieves 2 goals for the neocon project, which is, one, as you say, it is about resources and the flow of resources, because if you control all the states that were outlined in that 7-state plan, you have control over oil, rare earth minerals, and also the flow, these key trade routes through land and water that unless the West could control them, we would, if we could control them, then we could control the total international flow of all of these core minerals that and resources that are key for development. And of course, those countries aren't allowed to develop it and do it themselves. We have to do it for them and subjugate them. But the second side of that neocon project is to achieve greater Israel. And that used to be something that people joked about in early 2000. Even, liberal Zionists would have, in the United States, would have joked or laughed at the idea that that was actually what Israel was all about. But it's very clear now in 2024 that that is what these wars have all been for. What was achieved through the Syria war, other than weakening an Arab state that could have stood up to Israel? Well, they consolidated their control over the Golan Heights through that war. And now that Israel is stepping into Lebanon and pushing Palestinians into Egypt in order to have a de facto security presence there as well, it's obvious that this fantasy of greater Israel is it's a key component of the wars that we have been fighting in the Middle East since 9/11. And Americans just unfortunately fall for one narrative after the other. And for a while, it felt like after Iraq and that horrible war, we'd woken up. And so that's what Trump spoke to when he ran in 2016 and called out all those lies and called out the deep state. But here we are 8 years later, and Trump is telling us that Iran is trying to kill him. And that is the final step in this plan. That's the consolidation of this project.
Of the project of greater Israel. It was always
the project of greater Israel and the clean break, all of it. It is the war with Iran. And so if everybody that woke up and was like rah against the deep state falls for this, then we're through as a country, really. I mean, we are going to go to war with Iran, and Americans are going to die. So it's like, when do we learn our lesson?
The clean break document, for those who don't know, was composed by Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, and I think Merav Wormser and several other neoconservatives who would go on to serve in the Bush administration, playing a key role in orchestrating the war on Iraq. But they composed this document as part of a pro-Israel think tank in Washington for Benjamin Netanyahu as he campaigned for his first term as prime minister back in 1996. And it articulates his view toward the region, which is now playing out in a very advanced form after the destruction of so many independent Arab states and regional opponents to Israeli Western domination. So it's really important to read that document to understand what's happening now. And Yemen is a key part of it as well. Mohammed bin Salman, who commented this week, supposedly commented that he doesn't care about the Palestinians. He told the Biden administration that my people care about them and I can't get that out of the way. So you need to do something to give me the opportunity to do the Abraham Accords. Mohammed bin Salman has put forward this fantasy blueprint, which Netanyahu has signed on to, of transforming Yemen into a resort area for wealthy Saudis and Emiratis and people across the world, and also a bridge for Saudi Arabia to begin exporting its oil towards the Indian Ocean so they don't have to go all the way around the world. And so removing the Ansar Allah, or the Houthis, is so key also to the project of greater Israel and the Abraham Accords.
And the consolidation of neoliberalism, basically, as the dominant force in the Middle East.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have to be that way. They could actually have independent states that were aligned with Russia, China, the rising multipolar world, and they could manage this all themselves. But we also have to understand, like Yemen, Iran, these are ancient, actually real deep civilizations that have been there for centuries, long before the Saudis were ever invented or Israel came along.
Yeah, it really is a conflict between the fakest states on the planet and the oldest civilizations with the longest continuous human habitation in their capital cities. That also includes Syria. Damascus is one
Yeah.
of the oldest continuously inhabited places on the planet.